Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Good evening, everyone. So we started discussing my little book called Karma and Rebirth in Hinduism last week, and we're going to continue to do so. We're going to go through it fairly slowly. We started discussing chapter 2. It's a 5-chapter book, and we basically covered some of the main core doctrines of karma and rebirth that are shared across traditions within Hinduism. Now we're going to go into some of the nuances within Hindu traditions, because it's a mistake to say that there's just one Hindu doctrine of karma and rebirth. Scholars say that that's a monolithic understanding, and that's not the right way of thinking about things. Hinduism is a vast religion with many traditions within it, and they have subtly differing views on certain issues relating to karma and rebirth. So just to give you an example, actually let me do this. Let me ask you a question. If you believe in karma and rebirth, what exactly reincarnates? What do you think it reincarnates?
Taking birth again?
No. Listen to the question. What exactly is the nature of the reincarnating entity? Do you understand the question? What reincarnates?
Soul.
The Supreme Soul?
Okay, so you said soul, you said Supreme Soul. What's the difference?
Read the Bhagavad Gita.
Well, no, maybe you're saying the individual soul, like a jivatma. That's the Sanskrit term might be jivatma. And you're saying paramatma, which would be, of course, paramatma is defined differently in different traditions. So bhakti traditions like Ramanuja will say that's Vishnu. But Advaita Vedanta, classical Advaitins say paramatma is the non-dual self with the capital S. Okay, so is that what you're saying, Yorgos? Non-dual self? Interesting. What do you think about that?
I see both are same. They are telling both are same essentially.
Well, they are in a relationship. Atman is Brahman.
He is telling small self, he is telling capital self.
Right. Okay.
So ultimately both are same.
Okay, but let's probe that a little bit more deeply. Let's start with Yorgos' suggestion. Let's take the classical Advaitic framework. Okay? So then, in our deepest essence, we are the non-dual self, right? And you're saying that reincarnates. Hi, Trisha, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Have a seat anywhere. We're discussing, do you have the PDF of my book? Yorgos, can you help me with that? We're following my book and we're on page 10 roughly. We're not reading from it, but. Okay, so Yorgos, non-dual self. Now, does anyone know much about classical Advaita Vedanta? Okay, so the non-dual self, according to classical Advaita, is strictly speaking nishkriya. The Sanskrit term is nishkriya, which means it's totally inactive. It's a pure witness. And it's eternally liberated. It's nitya mukta. It's ever free. Now, in that case, can that really be the reincarnating entity? Yorgos, you listening?
If it's internally free, then how do you put it in a vehicle?
That's the whole point, exactly. So maybe the non-dual self is not the reincarnating entity, right? So, okay, good.
I think there is no karma concept in the highest standpoint of it.
Okay, so classical Advaita Vedanta makes a distinction between two standpoints. The Vyavaharika standpoint, which is the empirical standpoint, and then the Paramatika standpoint, which is the ultimate standpoint. Okay? So now we're just talking about classical Advaita. Okay, that's one tradition within Hinduism, but let's get clarity about that first, because you suggested that non-dual self. This is important. So, from the ultimate standpoint, the only reality is the non-dual, impersonal self. And that's it. And when I say non-dual, it means that your self is the same as her self, and they're not distinct. There's just one self. And it's eternally liberated. And it's pure consciousness. Okay? Okay. Now, from the empirical standpoint, which means what? What is the empirical standpoint according to classical Advaita? So long as we have not realized our nature as non-dual self, as a non-dual self, or non-dual Brahman, what we have to accept as real, this entire world of names and forms, we have to accept as real our own individuality, your Yorgos, your Shefali, and so on and so forth. And we should accept that there's a personal God who creates, preserves, and destroys this world, who loves us, who listens to our prayers, who responds to our prayers. There's a personal God. All of that. All of that is true from the empirical standpoint, but from the ultimate standpoint, none of it's true. The only truth is the non-dual self. Okay? So that's the metaphysical framework of Advaita Vedanta. Now, within that framework, see, it's good because now we're becoming more rigorous about when we're asking what is the reincarnating entity, we have to first ask which tradition within Hinduism are we talking about? So now we're just talking about classical Advaita Vedanta, right? So now what do classical Advaitins say about the nature of the reincarnating entity? Anyone, any guesses? First of all, where does rebirth and karma fall? In the empirical standpoint, or in the is it true from the empirical standpoint or from the ultimate standpoint, or both?
Only in the empirical.
Only from the empirical standpoint, right? So the whole idea of an individual soul which is in bondage, which feels that it's suffering, which becomes a spiritual aspirant, which takes a spiritual practice, and then finally realizes its non-dual nature, all of that is actually not true from the highest standpoint. There was only the non-dual self all along. There never was any bondage. There weren't even any individual souls. Okay, so Advaita Vedanta says that the reincarnating entity is the Jivatma, that's what Shefali was suggesting, the individual soul, right? So you have a distinct soul from him, he has a distinct soul from her, right, and so on. So that is the reincarnating entity, but in association with something else. It's not just the Jivatma. With what?
Subtle mind.
Yeah, the subtle body. The subtle body, actually. Yeah. The mind is the subtle body. Yeah. So, right. So in most Indian traditions, this is grossly physical matter. It's gross. It's a gross form of physical matter. Not that it's nasty, but but that you can actually see it, you can perceive it, right? And the mind, it's a very radical idea, but one that neuroscientists now seem to be accepting, which is that the brain, the mind itself is a subtle form of matter. The mind itself is a subtle form of matter. It's not a non-physical entity. It's matter. It's physical, but it's subtly physical. Because you might say, if it's matter, then why can't I see it under a microscope? Because it's a subtle form of matter. That's the idea. Okay. So now all Vedantic traditions, not just classical Advaita Vedanta, but all the different schools, Vishishta Advaita, Dvaita, Gaudiya Vaishnavism, Shuddha Advaita Vedanta, all of them say that the reincarnating entity is the Jivatma, the individual soul, in association with the subtle body, the mind. Yeah.
So things like your intuition, which we say, which carries over from previous lives, is that associated with the Jivatma, or the subtle mind is carrying?
Right, exactly. It's a subtle body. So let's not say subtle mind. You introduced the term subtle mind. Okay, so subtle body. Because the Sanskrit terms here are either linga sharira or sukshma sharira. Sukshma means subtle, sharira means body. So subtle body. Right. So what is the subtle mind? Subtle body. Now it's psyching me out. Okay. The subtle body. What is the subtle body? Basically, it's the mind. And it's the mind is the repository of latent impressions. Basically, everything we do leaves behind a trace in the mind, in the unconscious. Okay? And everything we've done in the past has left what are called samskaras, latent mental impressions, lodged in the unconscious. Which means what? I do a lot of stuff in my past life. There are a bunch of samskaras, good, bad, and neutral. At the time of death, physical death, what happens? That's the Jivatma, my soul, along with the subtle body, the mind, departs from the physical body. That's why some people say, when they have near-death experiences and stuff like that, that they spatially saw themselves in the corner of a room, looking down at their corpses, basically. Right? That's because that's the Jivatma in association with the subtle body. That's looking down on the grossly physical body. You following? Okay. So that leaves and in fact there's a verse in the Gita, Bhagavad Gita, I talk about in chapter 1. which says exactly this. The Jivatma in association with the subtle body, i.e. the mind, which is the repository of everything we've done and thought and said in the past, all stored up in the form of samskaras. And that's why, we'll get to this in more detail later when we talk about arguments in support of karma and rebirth. One argument is, each of us is in principle capable of gaining knowledge of our own past lives. How? By concentrating on our own past life samskaras. Because everything we've done in our past lives is actually stored up in our unconscious. So if we can concentrate on those samskaras, we'll regain our memories of what we did in our past lives. It's an interesting kind of argument. Yeah?
Have you tried?
No. See, this is one of those things where, now there's a whole trending kind of field called past life regression hypnosis. In fact, we had a monk who had my name.
Yeah.
Swami Medhananda. He was the ex-Swami Medhananda, and then now he's a past life regression hypnotist. So anyway, so he's intrigued. So it's like quite the career trajectory.
Because I read about this past life regression
Yeah.
maybe 10 years ago.
Did you read the book Many Lives, Many Masters?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really interesting book.
Yeah, very, very
Many
interesting.
Lives, Many Masters. You guys, how many of you read that book?
Many lives.
Many Lives, Many
Many
Masters. It's a fascinating book. Brian
Yeah.
Weiss, Weiss. It really, I mean, you gotta. It's like a. I mean, I couldn't put it down. It's like
Yeah.
it's a riveting read. Absolutely fascinating. But don't just read it. You can get excited, but just don't rush out and
Yeah.
do your
Don't follow that path.
Yeah. I don't recommend it.
That is very
But
addictive path.
yeah. So I will. But how did I get on this track anyway? What were we talking about?
Past life regression.
Yeah, right. How did I go there though? Huh?
Jivatma.
Oh yeah, all this stuff, right? Okay, so if you concentrate on your samskaras, you can gain knowledge of your past lives. Okay. So now coming back to this. So according to Vedanta, it's the Jivatma, the individual soul, in association with the mind that reincarnates. Yeah.
So then, an avtara how is that when they reincarnate? How is
Yeah.
that different from somebody? Like
Okay,
you
that's a deep
reincarnate?
question. It's one I didn't tackle in this book, but anyway, very good question. So the thing is, here's the thing. In all of these traditions, when the soul attains liberation, the subtle body dissolves.
Okay.
It's only at the time of liberation that the subtle body dissolves.
Okay.
And one thing you might be wondering, well, what about in devotional traditions where you dwell in a heaven? You don't dwell in a liberated soul doesn't dwell in a heaven with a subtle body.
Right.
They have a special, it's a body made of Shuddha Sattva. It's non-physical, it's a spiritual kind of body.
But in the temporary heaven, I would still have the
Yeah,
subtle
yeah,
body,
exactly.
right?
These temporary heavens, temporary hells,
Yeah.
you still have that subtle body. The moment you attain liberation, the subtle body perishes. And so what's left is the pure liberated soul. Okay, so now, coming to your question, an avatara, it's an interesting question. So when an avatara comes, I think this is discussed in the Great Master, actually, the biography of Sri Ramakrishna, because Sri Ramakrishna is widely considered to be an incarnation. And one theory is that when God incarnates in a human body, that he manufactures a subtle body for the purpose of,
Sure.
serving humanity. So it's not one that he was saddled with to begin with, right? And it's not coming out of his own karma. That's that's a more important difference.
Right.
See, we're forced to come back here. We're compelled to come back because of our past karma, right? Because we haven't escaped the cycle of rebirth. The avatara is ever free. He's God, right? Or God is ever free. And so God freely chooses to assume a human body to serve humanity and to uplift humanity. And to do that, he has to manufacture a subtle body and then actually be born in the womb of a mother and so on and so forth. So I think that would be the way to think about it is, yeah, they'd have to manufacture a subtle body. Any other questions? Okay, so all Vedantic traditions say that the reincarnating entity is the subtle body, is the Jivatma, the individual soul. And what's the conscious entity here in that bundle? The Jivatma in association with the subtle body. Where's consciousness? What's the locus of consciousness?
Atma, no? It's not. No.
It is. Yeah, it's a Jivatma. Yeah, it's the soul, which is it's an eternal, conscious soul in association with an insentient subtle body, an insentient mind. The mind itself is actually insentient. Think of it as these days as ChatGPT or something like that. Okay. but it's the conscious soul that lends. It makes it imparts. Sometimes makes it seem as if the mind itself is conscious, but actually it's the conscious soul behind it. Sri Ramakrishna used to give the example of, he says, if you're boiling vegetables in a pot, right, and the vegetables are hopping up and down, which makes it seem as if they're jumping of their own volition, but actually it's a fire beneath it that's causing it to jump, right? So it's the same kind of thing. So the mind, you might mistake the mind as conscious, but that's because of the consciousness in the soul actually behind it. Okay, now, the interesting thing is, in other traditions of Hinduism, they have other views on the nature of the reincarnating entity. They don't agree with Vedanta, that it's a jivatma in association with the subtle body. But before we get into that, one more thing, yeah. One more thing though. Within Vedanta, there are many traditions. Advaita Vedanta is one of the few that is that teaches ultimately that the personal God is not real. It's only real from the empirical standpoint, but not from the highest standpoint. And that also means that karma and rebirth are only true from the empirical standpoint. Whereas all the other traditions of Vedanta, actually all the other traditions of Hinduism, essentially, I mean, I can't think of another example, believe that karma and rebirth are just true, even from the ultimate standpoint. They don't even make the distinction that classical Advaitas make between ultimate and empirical. So they say karma and rebirth is just true. Until you attain liberation, there is an individual soul that keeps coming back and back. And Advaita says the whole thing is a dream. And even that dream metaphor is not quite right, because then you have to ask who the dreamer is. And there never was a dream and there never was a dreamer, because Brahman can't dream. If Brahman dreams, then he's subject to ignorance, right? And so it gets really heady, actually. So basically, there's nothing but the non-dual self, is the Advaitic view, which means it's the only school within Hinduism, essentially, as far as I can tell, which says that karma and rebirth never actually happened. It's only true from the empirical standpoint, and that we don't even have individual souls. There were no individual souls. There's just the non-dual self all along, quote unquote, dreaming this dream, but it actually doesn't even dream. Okay, so that's just one caveat. So now, back to this question. What is the nature of the reincarnating entity? All Vedantic traditions say. Now you should say quickly, what is it? What do Vedantic traditions say?
Subtle body and the something jita.
Jivatma. Or you can call it Jiva, J-I-V-A. The Jivatma plus subtle body. Right? You should be able to say it quickly like that. Okay, good. Now, there are at least two other responses to this question. I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but it's quite interesting. So, Sankhya. What is the Sankhyan answer to this question? Sankhya is one of the oldest Indian spiritual philosophies. Its answer is the reincarnating entity is the subtle body alone. They don't even have the concept of a jivatma, an individual soul. We don't need to go into the details, but it's because Sankhya is based on what's called a metaphysical dualism. There are only two basic categories, metaphysical categories, Purusha and Prakriti. Purusha is a conscious soul, but it's eternally liberated. It's Nitya Mukta, so that can't reincarnate. And then Prakriti is insentient nature. And so if it's insentient, can't reincarnate, right? So a stone can't reincarnate. And they don't have any intermediate category of a jivatma there. So what do they say? Oh, what reincarnates? It's the subtle body. The mind, essentially, which is on the insentient, it's on the Prakriti side. But the problem is, how can something insentient reincarnate? Just think about it.
So the consciousness is also carried, they say, in the subtle body.
No, they don't. So they say Prakriti is strictly insentient.
Yeah.
But that because of the proximity of Purusha, this conscious Purusha, it makes it seem as if the mind is conscious, and you look puzzled, as I think you should be, because I'm teaching a class on the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and one of my hobby horses is to point out that there's a kind of incoherence in trying to answer this question of the reincarnating entity. And I'm not alone, because Shankara, the great Shankaracharya, in his Brahma Sutra Bhashya 2.2.7, I think, he criticizes Sankhya on a number of grounds, but one of them is He says, look, you have this radical metaphysical dualism between Purusha and Prakriti. You can't explain bondage. You can't explain liberation. Who or what exactly is bound and liberated? You have to posit a third entity called the Jivatma. So that's a kind of Advaita critique of Sankhya metaphysics, yeah. Okay. So or just a Vedantic critique of Sankhya, actually. So I think the Vedantic position arguably is more logical because it posits a conscious soul in association with the subtle body. If you just posit the subtle body as the reincarnating entity, it doesn't quite work because it's insentient. There's no consciousness there. Now, then why can't the Sankhyans say, well, it's the Purusha that reincarnates? Can't do that because it's eternally liberated. You see how there's a problem. You need a conscious entity that is capable of being bound. Right? So that's the Jivatma. Okay. Now on the other side, we've got another Hindu tradition, which says that the reincarnating entity is only the Atma, but without the subtle body. Can you guess? Wild guesses on what tradition this is? It's the Atman, but minus the subtle body. They don't posit a subtle body. Nyaya, it's pretty obscure. So Nyaya is a school of Indian philosophy, of Hindu philosophy, that is famous for teaching kind of logical principles, logical fallacies, very analytical. So Gautama's Nyaya Sutras is the foundational scripture, and then there's a lot of commentaries and sub-commentaries, and really brilliant minds have worked on this. And a lot of Western philosophers work on Nyaya as well. Okay, so Nyaya says it's just the Atman, the Jivatman, but they don't posit a subtle body. But so you might ask, well then what carries the samskaras? The Atman itself. Right. So they have a different understanding, Nyaya and Vaisheshika. They're these two twin schools. They say that the conscious soul itself can be the repository of samskaras also. Okay, so there are these kind of subtly differing views. You should, if you want, you can think about it yourself. What do you find to be most logical and why? Okay, so that's one big question. Another one is, does everybody eventually get liberated from this cycle of rebirth? So the doctrine is called universal liberation. That's the view that every soul will eventually attain liberation. Okay, and there are actually differing views on this. And what's interesting is if you look at the classical texts, if you look at the commentaries of the traditional Vedantins like Shankaracharya, like Ramanuja, like Madhva, all these, you don't really get a clear answer, as far as I can tell. Oh, Madhva, you get a clear answer. Do you know what Madhva's clear answer is?
This permanent hell and heaven. People are condemned to hell.
Yeah, exactly, right. So he distinguishes, okay, so Madhva is he's the founder of the dualistic school of Vedanta, Dvaita Vedanta, and he distinguishes three categories of soul. He says Jiva Taratamya. So there are three categories, and there's a hierarchy. Taratamya means hierarchy. So let's start from the top, because it's less depressing. Okay. So there's Mukti Yogyas, the souls that are capable of liberation. So they're bound now, but eventually, after a certain number of lifetimes, they will attain liberation. Great. Which consists in dwelling in an eternal heaven, because this is a Bhakti school. He believes in Vishnu. Okay. Middle category, Nitya Samsaris. These are souls that are bound to transmigrate endlessly, and they can never escape from this transmigratory cycle. They're just stuck. It's like laundry cycle, eternal laundry cycle. Just imagine you're stuck in there. Okay, and then you thought that was bad. wait for the third category. Tamo Yogya. Those who are destined for the darkness of eternal hell. Sounds like our Christian proselytizers on campus. So
Yeah, it's like, besides the middle thing, it's basically Judgment Day.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's pretty bad. So anyway, so they're the ones who are destined for eternal hell. And so Madhva is a kind of outlier in believing that some souls are condemned to eternal hell. Okay. And some also are, so there are a lot of souls that are not getting liberated, right? Because only that one out of the three categories is getting liberation eventually. Now, what do other Hindu traditions say? As far as I can tell, this is based on my own research, and you can prove me wrong if you want, the classical figures like Shankara, Ramanuja, they don't clearly say whether they believe in universal liberation. They just don't. Okay. Now, so they kind of leave it open, as far as I can tell. But one can make the argument that the twin doctrines of karma and rebirth, that these joint doctrines taken together, even if they don't necessarily entail liberation, they can strongly imply it. Why? Think about it. Why? Why might that be the case? I talk about it here, but I want you to use your brains. Why, if you accept karma and rebirth, why would it be logical to accept universal liberation? Think about it. I'll give you an answer. Anyone?
Because if there is good karma, you get a higher birth. If there is bad karma, you get a lower birth.
Yeah.
If there's like a median karma, like if someone like is it like an equilibrium, they probably attain moksha.
Mhm.
So everything has to become equilibrium at some point.
Right, I think you're on the right track. Let's go to page 21. Can you open either your soft copy or your hard copy?
And I offer my mathematical justification.
Okay.
If the cycle has to do with like the exhaustion of karma,
Mhm.
either good or bad karma, then asymptotically at some point you just reach zero on both categories. And then
Well, isn't that,
come-
yeah, that's kind of what he was saying. So yeah. Right. So eventually you'll get it, right? Yeah. So let's look at page 21. Are we there? I want somebody to read it. Who has it open? Page 21. You already there? Sudarshan's there.
Okay, you can read.
No, Sudarshan's gonna start. Okay. Okay. Page 21, 2.3.2. Read.
Okay. While none of the classical
Wait, read the section heading.
Okay. Do karma and rebirth entail universal liberation? While none of the classical Hindu traditions explicitly affirmed universal liberation, many modern Hindu thinkers argued that an evolutionary conception of karma and rebirth goes hand in hand with the view that every soul will eventually be liberated, if not in this life, then in a future life. By reaping the karmic consequences of our actions, we gradually learn from our mistakes and thereby make moral and spiritual progress. Moreover, the doctrine of rebirth ensures that we get as many chances as we need to get things right. We will be reborn so long as we have not attained the ultimate goal of perfection.
Good. Okay. Are you getting the logic here? It's kind of along the lines of what you're saying. Look, if we're reborn indefinitely until we attain liberation, then even if we don't get it right this time, we have infinitely many chances to get it right, right? And so theoretically, in principle, we'll all eventually get it right? That's the idea. Okay.
She has questions.
Oh yeah.
I have a question.
Mhm.
So when we are talking about good karma, I think we did discuss this last week. It's also, but you're saying that good karma means temporary heaven and bad karma.
Yeah.
Means,
It still keeps you within this samsara, actually.
yeah. So how will somebody attain equilibrium? Because you might
Right.
want to like do good karma, even though you
Right.
do you don't like.
It's good to do good karma,
I
but
think it's good doing good karma without the action, like without the result, wanting the action.
without
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
selfish motives. Nishkama. It should be
But
done in a nishkama way,
If
without
it's
selfish
yeah,
motives.
but even if it's done in a nishkama way, then that is good karma, right? Which means that this
Oh,
person
but that-
will be pushed into heaven because he did good karma, not given.
Yeah, but
moksha.
remember we talked about this last time actually.
I
The-
think
You
we
might not
talked about
necessarily.
God in the other person and helping them.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about a divinity in the person, like we are helping to, so the good karma will just take us closer to liberation than just pushing us to heaven.
I think what is her question is if I do some good karma, even unselfishly, I will get merits.
Oh,
Then I will be in the heaven. Like how will
Yeah.
I get liberated?
I know, no, we
And
talked
so
about this
does
last
that
week.
mean-
But this is a deep question, so let's revisit page 9. We read this last time, but it's very important that we understand this. So, okay, you, Shefali, you're the one who's going to read this.
Okay.
Bottom paragraph on page 9.
Yeah.
In most Hindu traditions,
You can take book. It's easy to read.
Okay, thank you.
bottom paragraph.
Oh, got it. In most Hindu traditions, the ultimate aim of life is not the accumulation of good karma but liberation, moksha, from rebirth, which can only be achieved through the exhaustion of all karma, both good and bad. As we will see, However, Hindu traditions differ on the question of precisely which spiritual practices lead to liberation and how they do so. Nonetheless, all Hindu traditions hold that action done with desire, sakama,
That's correct. Sakama.
for their karmic results always have karmic consequences, while good actions done without desire, nishkama, for their karmic results help to purify the mind and exhaust one's karma, thereby bringing one closer to the goal of liberation.
And now read the footnote because it adds another nuance.
Footnote
11.
11, right. It should be noted, however, that Hindu traditions differ on the question of whether good actions done without desire for their results also generate karmic results in the form of merit, punya. According to Sadananda's Vedanta Sara.
See the long A because of that you should say so Vedanta Sara.
Okay, Vedanta Sara, a popular treatise of Advaita Vedanta. Good acts done without desire lead primarily to purification of mind, but they also have secondary results.
Avantara phalam.
Avantara phalam, in the form of a karmic reward, such as going to Pitraloka, the realm of the ancestors, or Satyaloka, the realm of the celestial beings after death.
By contrast,
Patanjali's Yoga Sutra 4.7 holds that spiritual practices done without desire for their results are neither white nor black actions.
Ashukla Krishna Karma.
Ashukla Krishna Karma. In that they generate neither merit nor demerit, but lead instead to liberation.
Okay, it's a little technical, but this directly answers your question.
Yeah, it makes
so
sense.
so here it is. Okay, so the question is, I do something good. I go to a soup kitchen. Now, the first distinction to make is, I go to a soup kitchen and I serve the needy, the unhoused, but I do it with selfish motives. What might my motives be? Getting recognition, getting that, oh, you're so great. Wow, I wish that I was as good as you are, and so on. And you get a little, stuff. Okay, so what happens? That's called sakama. It's a good karma, externally speaking, because you're helping someone else, right? But there's still a selfish motive, which means what? You'll be rewarded. You do accrue good karma, punya. You get punya, which ultimately will lead to favorable circumstances in the future. That might be dwelling in some kind of a temporary heaven, a swarga, enjoying yourself for some time, coming back. But you have to come back. Okay, now, second scenario. I go to the soup kitchen. I do the same action, but without any selfish motives. That means nishkama. I do it in a nishkama manner, without any desire for any outcome whatsoever. I do it as just service, serving the divine in the human beings that come to me to the soup kitchen. What happens in that case? Different traditions within Hinduism give different answers to this question. That's what this footnote is saying.
Yeah.
Now, classical Advaita Vedanta says, you get two for the price of one. That's the nice thing about it, right? You do a good action, nishkama, what happens? You purify your mind, which brings you closer to the ultimate goal of liberation from rebirth. And at the same time, you also get the benefits of the sakama karma, because you'll still go to this temporary heaven for some time. Until you get liberation, you'll still get the good karmic results of the good action. So you get two for the price of one. Because some people might think like, oh, so if I take the spiritual life, I won't have any fun in life anymore. Like I won't. No, but so the Advaita Vedantic view at least is that you get two for the price of one, which is nice. Now, Yoga Sutra is a little bit more austere. They seem to hold a different view, which is that if you're a spiritual aspirant and you do something strictly speaking without any selfish motive, you will accrue neither papa nor punya, neither merit nor demerit. It's strictly neutral, which means what? You're basically just wearing out your karma, but you're not going to accrue any good karma as a result. Yeah.
What if somebody did a bad karma without, but with a good intention, or without any intention? Let's say.
What's without any intention? How do you,
or with a
the
good
person is
motive.
crazy.
For example,
huh?
like I can give you an example of Mahabharata. Like Shakuni was a very bad person. He did a lot of bad things, but he was actually doing that to help his nephew, or he was doing it with a
Bad
good-
motive, right?
Yeah, it's still a bad motive, but then like karmic wise, it might be like he's not doing that to bad to people intentionally. It is only that his motive was that his nephew should be on the throne, or he felt that there was injustice done to his sister and her children. So
Those are still
Example.
selfish motives, right? Because he's attached to those people, and he's acting out of that because of that emotional attachment.
What about us killing like bugs or microorganisms while we're working without any?
So here again, we get some divergences among traditions. So Jainism, of course, is a non-Hindu tradition, but the Jaina monks are extremely strict about this stuff because of this idea that every time we walk carelessly, and even if we try to walk carefully, we're killing microbes left and right. And each of those has a jiva, has a soul, which means what? We're accruing bad karma. Anytime, even vegetables that come out of the ground is a kind of killing. That's why the strict Jaina monks, as far as I've heard, they'll only eat the fruit that falls from trees. You can't even pluck fruit because that's causing harm to a living entity, which is because trees are also ensouled. So it gets tricky. Fortunately, Hindu traditions don't hold that extreme a view. And they're going to say, actually, there's a whole, I talk about this at the end if you're interested. In chapter 5, I have a discussion of kind of moral vegetarianism and stuff like that. So there are really interesting Hindu texts on the morality of killing animals for food and all that. And what they say is, because non-human animals also have souls, it's unethical to eat animals. Okay, so that's an argument for vegetarianism. But then you might ask, well, what about eating plants? Because plants also have souls, right? So that, maybe I can just skip to the page and say, because it's an interesting discussion here. Let me see here.
is it animal rights and environmental ethics?
Oh yeah, exactly, that section. It's on page 56.
Yeah.
Page 56. But we don't have to read the whole thing, I'm just trying to find. Okay, how about let's look at page 57. And who hasn't read? Yorgos? Indian thinkers.
In Jain, Buddhism, and Hindu traditions provided cogent arguments against speciesism and in favor of
Speciesism. Look at that. Speciesism.
Oh, I've heard it as species.
Yeah.
Speciesism.
Which means, I explained in the previous paragraph, which means thinking that the human race is superior to all other species. Yeah, okay.
It's racism, but for species.
Yes, very good. For human species, yeah.
And in favor of moral vegetarianism many hundreds of years before Western philosophers. The highly influential Hindu treatise Manusmriti, circa 100 to 300 CE, defends moral vegetarianism by appealing specifically to the doctrines of karma and rebirth. The first argument for moral vegetarianism that can be reconstructed from the Manusmriti is a consequentialist one. The text repeatedly warns that the acts of killing animals and eating meat outside the context of Vedic sacrifice have very negative karmic consequences. According to the Manusmriti, a person who kills an animal frivolously, that is, not as part of a Vedic sacrifice, having died, attains painful death in birth after birth just as many times as there are hairs in the animal Pasu
Pashu.
that they have killed. Likewise, having eaten meat in violation of the Vedic injunctions, the person, when dead, is eaten against their will by those that they have eaten. Hence, it is in our own self-interest not to eat meat, since eating meat has severely negative long-term karmic consequences for us in the form of intense suffering in many future embodiments that far outweighs the fleeting short-term pleasure of eating meat.
Okay, and now it gets interesting. Okay, so now we understand that, it's pretty simple. But now, read the next paragraph. How about Aman?
Christopher from our end has also reconstructed from the Manusmriti a more elaborate, non-consequential argument for moral
Non-consequentialist.
non-consequentialist argument for moral vegetarianism. The argument is contained in germ in 5.49 of the Manusmriti. Having seen the origin of meat and the binding and slaughter of embodied entities, a person turns away from eating all meat. According to the Manusmriti, all animals and plants have souls, jivatmas, and are therefore internally conscious.
Antasagnya,
Anta
samya.
samya.
Mm.
And endowed with the capacity for pleasure and pain. I'm not going to try.
Don't worry about it. Keep going.
Moreover, the passage itself states that pain is bad, and that binding and slaughtering embodied entities causes them pain, which suggests that the value and disvalue of pleasure and pain are at least partly intrinsic. If pain has intrinsic disvalue, then the fact that my action might cause pain to an entity constitutes a direct, prima facie reason for refraining from performing that action. Therefore, all sentient entities, by virtue of the fact that they are capable of experiencing pleasure and pain, have direct moral standing. That is, they are inherently worthy of being treated in a moral way.
Okay, so this is an argument for vegetarianism. But then that question arises. How is it any better to eat plants? Because plants also have souls. So now we have to read. Aditya, can you read the next paragraph?
However, Samarin goes on to note that in Manusmriti, in according with common sense, does not ascribe equal moral standing to humans, non-human animals and plants.
Okay, and then read the footnote because it's kind of funny.
As Samarin plausibly argues, granting equal moral standing to all lands us in the absurd position of having seriously to consider whether we should, for instance, sacrifice the life of a human being to save that of a plant.
Are you following? We're going to end up with moral dilemmas where should I save the weed or should I save my kid? You know, like okay. So all right. So now keep reading.
This is evident from the fact that the text endorses vegetarianism over a carnivorous diet, thereby implying that plants have less moral standing than animals. Drawing upon Meda Titi's and
Kulluka Bhatta.
Kuluka Bhatta's commentary.
You're South Indian, right? So this is okay. Okay, yeah. Keep reading.
Commentaries on the Manusmriti, Samarin notes that sentient entities have varying degrees of sensitivities to pain depending on how much tamas, the guna or the energy of inertia, lethargy and dullness they possess. Since plants have a great deal of tamas, they are far less capable of experiencing pain than animals. Moreover, among animals, non-human animals have more tamas than humans, which means that non-human animals are more sensitive to pain than plants are, but are less sensitive to pain than humans are. Hence, the view implied in Manusmriti is that it is morally acceptable to kill and eat plants for food, but not to kill and eat animals for food because animals have greater direct moral standing than plants in virtue of their greater sensitivity to pain. Two other Hindu texts, namely the
Oh, we don't have to read that last part. Yeah.
Anusasana Parva of the epic Mahabharata and the Yoga Sutra, make similar arguments for the moral standing of animals and plants on the basis of their sentience.
Okay, very good. So what's the main argument? The main argument here is that even though plants are also ensouled, they have souls and they have some amount of consciousness, they are far less sensitive to pain than non-human animals. And non-human animals are less sensitive to pain than human animals, than us, right? So there's a kind of, and how do they explain that in terms of a certain kind of, by the degree of tamas. So there's more tamas in non-human animals than in humans. There's even more tamas in plants than in non-human animals. And so the more tamas you have, the duller you are, the less sensitive you are to inflictions of pain, basically.
But don't you need to also make the argument that plants are so much less sentient or feeling of pain, etc., than humans, that you know you can accumulate all that pain throughout the human's lifespan and it's still less than that human just committing suicide instead of eating. Because if you have inflicted so much pain on so many plants throughout your lifetime, then that may sum up to be more to the pain you will experience from just sitting still and dying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's like he must have been a Jaina in his last life. Yeah, no, these are good arguments. I mean, look, I don't want to resolve the debate once and for all here, but it's so Jainas, in a way, they've got some rational arguments on their side, because if plants are ensouled, and not just plants, forget about it, but we've got microbes, we've got bacteria, they all have souls. right? So in that case, I mean, every time we breathe, we're killing microbes.
Also, if we all die immediately by another Big Bang, then no more pain is going to be inflicted to anyone for eternity.
But in a way, this is law of nature, right? Plants are meant to be eaten by the other animals, and animals.
But then, people are going to tell the Hindus cows are meant to be eaten by. So where do you draw the line here?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah. So okay. So anyway, but let's yeah. But now you get what some of the main arguments are. You can use the doctrines of karma and rebirth to try to support moral vegetarianism on the grounds that these non-human animals have souls and they can feel pain because they're conscious, and so it's just unethical to eat animals for that reason. And then also you understand the subtle argument to explain why we can still eat plants nonetheless. But Jainas may arguably have a more rational argument in saying that no, even plucking the potatoes from out of the ground is a form of violence, and it causes pain to that plant, and therefore you should only eat the fruit that accidentally falls from tree. You should be waiting there under the tree. Okay, so all right.
Swamiji, so coming back to the we all started with this because we were talking about how bad karma can be like selfish or not selfish, right?
Or good karma can be
Good.
No, also bad karma, like.
Well, anything. Well, bad karma is inherently selfish.
No,
So-
that's why I wanted to give you another example. So let's say somebody hit another person by accident, not at all intentionally.
Right.
It just happened, like
Right.
because his brake failed or something.
Okay.
And he hits this other person, and this person who was driving has spent his life in guilt, but he's not punished because obviously it was an accident. It was not intentional, right? Does the driver accrue bad karma, or
Wait, what is the consequence of his brakes failing?
the other person died? Let's say.
He hit someone.
Yeah, he hit someone, and the other.
Wonderful, Shifali, because you're really providing a perfect segue into another part of my book.
Okay.
So in the same chapter, because I literally used that metaphor. Okay, so just before what we just read, look at 5.2, page 53. It's called moral luck. It's really interesting. And I'll just read the part. So what is moral luck? The idea is that intuitively, we should only be blamed and we should only be applauded from a moral standpoint for things that are under our control, right?
For our actions, not the consequences, right?
Yeah, but still, but things that are actually, but that, we were free to do or not do. That's the idea. If it wasn't in our control, we're not going to praise the person for it from a moral standpoint, right? Now, at the same time, often we are morally judged for things that are not fully under our control. And this is the example that's used. So now, that's what's called moral luck. And then I look at how the doctrines of karma and rebirth can help us to explain or respond to this problem. Okay, look at the top of page 55. Who has not read yet? Trisha, can you read? Those who subscribe, page 55 top.
Those who subscribe to this Hindu worldview would fully accept the control principle while denying the very existence of all three forms of luck.
The control principle is the idea that we should only be morally judgeable, like subject to approval and disapproval based on what's under our control. Yeah, so keep reading.
To see this, let us revisit the example of the psychopathic killer. From a Hindu standpoint, the
Sorry. This is actually about the psychopathic killer. This is not quite. Okay, next paragraph. Sorry. What about resultant luck?
What about resultant luck? Let us revisit persons A and B discussed in the other example earlier.
That's what I'm looking for. Sorry. So 54. Let's. Okay. To see that paragraph on page 54. To grasp resultant luck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Please read that. Sorry.
To grasp resultant luck, Andrew Lattis, 2024, invites us to imagine that two otherwise conscientious people, let us call them person A and person B, have forgotten to have their brakes checked recently and experience brake failure. But only one of them, person A, finds a child in the path of his car. It seems plausible to feel that person A is more morally blameworthy than person B, in spite of the fact that both were equally negligent about checking their brakes, and person A had no control over the fact that there was a child in front of his car.
Let's pause. So doesn't this remind you of the example that you gave?
Yeah.
See? I read your mind.
Exactly.
Okay, good.
Maybe I read the book.
Wait, did you? Okay. Okay. So now we can come back to the paragraph that that you started with, Tricia, page 55,
Okay.
and let us revisit persons A and B. So now we're revisiting the persons that we just learned about. Okay, but do you get the scenario? Two cases, equally negligent in not checking their brakes, and thank you. But the consequences of their actions radically different, because there happened to be a child in front of the car of one of these people, and they end up with manslaughter. I mean, killing somebody, and we consider that how? I mean, that person is just so irresponsible. You should have checked. The other guy got away scot-free, no harmful consequences. But aren't they equally morally blameworthy? So now, how do the doctrines of karma and rebirth help us to account for these kinds of scenarios? Please read. Let us revisit.
Okay, let us revisit the example of the psychopathic killer. From a Hindu standpoint, the genetic tendencies and temperament with which we were born are the
Wait,
result.
no. Next paragraph, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
What other resultant luck?
What about resultant?
What about resultant luck? Let us revisit persons A and B discussed in the other example earlier. From a Hindu standpoint, it was not, in fact, a matter of luck that person A and not person B found a child in his path and fatally struck him. Rather, there was a child on person A's path at that exact moment as a joint result of person A's karma and the child's own karma. Hence, it is reasonable to take person A to be more morally blameworthy than person B, hence, since it was person A's own bad karma, accrued earlier in the current life and or in the past life, that resulted in the fatal consequences of his failure to check his brakes.
Okay, do you follow?
Yeah.
So that, okay, exactly. So it's because of that person's bad karma that he was put in a situation where his negligence to check the brakes ended up with the killing of a child. And so you can actually explain why he's judged to be morally worse than the person who also didn't check his brakes but who didn't harm anybody in the process. Okay? Okay, yeah.
I have a similar scenario.
Yeah.
In this case, what if one person is, say, more misguided than the other, and do they, reap less bad karma?
What do you mean misguided? What does that mean?
They grew up in an environment where
that
they
way.
weren't maybe given those sense of
You
ethics,
guys are great.
morals,
Okay,
values.
so then we have to read the other part of it. Okay, so then we come to the psychopathic killer. So what do we look at? So Aman can read it because everybody else is read. So, okay, bottom of page 53, Aman.
To help us?
Yes.
Okay. To help us understand constitutive and circumstantial luck, let us imagine the following scenario. We may know of a psychopathic killer who was born with a genetic propensity for murderous behavior and who was beaten and tortured as a child by his parents. Let us stipulate that it was as a result of this genetic tendency, coupled with the physical and emotional abuse he suffered as a child, that this person went on to become a vicious killer.
Become
a vicious killer. The murderous tendency with which this killer was born is an instance of constitutive luck, since he did not have any control over the mental and genetic makeup with which he was born. The abuse and torture to which his parents subjected him are an instance of circumstantial luck, since he didn't choose his parents. It seems reasonable and natural to feel and express moral disapproval of his behavior, even though neither his mental makeup nor his childhood circumstances were under his control.
Okay, so this is a scenario, right? The kind of scenario you're thinking of.
Yeah.
Look at that. See, I read your mind too. I'm reading all your minds. Okay, now, how do the doctrines of karma and rebirth respond to this problem? Read from the top of page 55. This is the one that Tricia was reading earlier. Those who subscribe.
Those who subscribe to this Hindu worldview would fully accept the control principle while denying the very existence of all three forms of luck. To see this, let us revisit the example of the psychopathic killer. From a Hindu standpoint, the genetic tendencies and temperament with which we were born are the result of our own volitional behavior in past lives. Hence, the psychopathic killer's genetic tendency to commit violence and murder is not in fact a matter of luck. Rather, in his previous life, he had engaged in violent acts each of which left latent mental impressions, samskaras, that he was born with in this life. Moreover, our behavior in past lives equally determines the circumstances of our present life, including the psychopathic killer's abuse and torture at the hands of his cruel parents. Hence, from a Hindu perspective, we can accept the control principle and still unproblematically take the psychopathic killer to be morally blameworthy, since neither constitutive luck nor circumstantial luck played any role in making him the killer that he is.
Okay, does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Look at that, left to right on this. Okay, so, right, exactly. So all these problems arise because we assume that there are these certain forms of luck. And what Karma and Rebirth do is they eliminate the luck side of things. It says that it's actually not lucky. None of this is lucky. It's a matter of what we did in our own past lives. Yeah.
Yeah, but isn't it like compounding the effect of like one bad thing to
Double
another?
penalty?
Yeah,
Why?
because he will get a bad karma for something he did, which was done as a result of his first bad karma. Isn't it like compounding the actions of his?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a double penalty so much as we were talking about this last time. Do you remember in the last class we were talking about how karmic results accrue in two different ways. One is metaphysically and the other is psychologically. And I think what you're talking about is more like the psychological side of things. The idea being that every time we do something bad, it reinforces and strengthens our bad character. It strengthens bad habits, which then go to forming an even worse character, which makes it more likely for us to commit bad acts in the future. So it's a kind of vicious cycle. But the thing is that that cycle is also true from the good standpoint, from the opposite standpoint. It could be a positive cycle, what's called a virtuous cycle. Right? Which means I do a good action. It may not be very pleasant, but I generate good karma that improves my character. I become better and better. The better I become, the easier it is for me to commit, and kind of the more natural it is for me to do good actions. So that's a kind of virtuous cycle. So yes, that is true, but it's not a double penalty. The idea is that's just it's a psychological fact, basically. That's how I see it. Okay, so now we're flipping around a bit, but it's important that we get to maybe just one more really key doctrine I want to introduce here, and it's on page 20 to 21, 2 paragraphs. I will read a paragraph, and then I'm going to ask our monastic friend here. Should we get the next paragraph? Okay, so 2.3.1. The section is called Retributive versus Evolutionary Karma. Okay. Okay, so are you all there?
Page?
20. Oh, I'm fine, thank you. You can give it to, yeah, I don't need it, thank you. Okay. While classical Hindu philosophers tended to conceive karma primarily as a retributive principle of reward and punishment, many modern Hindu thinkers defended an evolutionary doctrine of karma, according to which the primary purpose of karma and rebirth is not to give us what we deserve, but to foster our moral and spiritual growth. Okay, there's a lot there, so let me just do a little unpacking, because we're not reading this word for word and sentence by sentence. Classical Hindu traditions, they typically understand the doctrine of karma as a retributive one. It's a doctrine of retribution. It's a doctrine of reward and punishment. I do something good, God rewards me with a lollipop. I do something bad, God slaps me in the face, right? Makes me feel bad. Bad karma. Big Bang Theory, there's the Rajesh Kutrapali. Have we talked about this?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So he says you're going to be reborn as a banana slug in your next life, right? Okay, retribution. Now, some modern Hindu thinkers defend a different way of thinking about this doctrine of karma. It's not that they reject the idea of reward and punishment, but they say that the purpose of reward and punishment, there's something more fundamental behind it. The fundamental aim of the doctrine of karma is to foster our moral and spiritual growth. And that's what's called the evolutionary doctrine of karma. So you're following? The retributive versus the evolutionary doctrine of karma. Okay? So now what is this evolutionary doctrine of karma? That is what we're going to go on to read about. Page 20. The 19th century Bengali mystic Sri Ramakrishna, for instance, taught that God has created this world with the aim of making saints out of each of us. One becomes a saint, he claims, by conquering the senses. And it is precisely through our experiences of the karmic consequences of our actions, in the form of both joy and suffering, that we evolve morally and spiritually until we finally reach the spiritual goal. The Advaita Vedantin monk Swami Medhananda echoed his guru Ramakrishna in likening this world to a, quote, a great gymnasium in which you and I and millions of souls must come and get exercises and make ourselves strong and perfect. Likewise, Paramahamsa Yogananda, a teacher of Kriya Yoga and founder of the Self-Realization Fellowship, held that, quote, God made this earth not only as a hobby, but also because he wanted to make perfect souls that would evolve back to him. And then I go on to point out that Sri Aurobindo, I'll have him read it, but well, let's pause for a second. Okay, so we get a lot of these modern Hindu thinkers saying very explicitly that the purpose of karma is to foster our moral and spiritual evolution, our moral growth, right? Okay, and you can say that, at least I intuitively find that approach to karma more appealing and a little less of a crude picture of God, actually. Like, so God is not just kind of like a super judge or something. And it's like, you did something bad, you did something good, great. But there's a deeper and more profound spiritual purpose behind what we're doing. You know?
That's what the egg is about.
I haven't gotten that yet. Okay, thanks. Okay, all right, I gotta read that. He sent me a story. Okay, so now, Shivamai, can you read the next paragraph?
Yeah. So it starts with however.
Correct.
However, the Hindu thinker who articulated and defended an evolutionary conception of karma and rebirth with the greatest sophistication and subtlety was the integral Advaita Vedantin Sri Aurobindo. He argued that a retributive understanding of karma as a system of rewards and punishments turns virtue into selfishness, a commercial bargain of self-interest, since we would only perform virtuous actions for the sake of their karmic fruits in the form of our own future happiness. According to Aurobindo, while these doctrines of karma and rebirth do ensure that each being reaps what he sows, their overarching purpose is to foster our spiritual evolution by helping us to manifest our innately divine nature. It should be noted that this modern Hindu emphasis on the evolutionary thrust of karma and rebirth need not be seen as a total rupture with the classical Indian past. Indeed, Aurobindo himself viewed his evolutionary conception of karma and rebirth as a further development of evolutionary themes already contained in the germ in the ancient
Contained in germ
in the ancient Vedic hymns, the Isha Upanishad, and the Bhagavad Gita.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is interesting. See, the core principle of karma is we reap what we sow. There, the retributive understanding and the evolutionary understanding, there's no difference. They both accept this idea, this core principle. We reap what we sow. But what does Retributive say? He says, look, if we approach karma as a retributive principle, then what's our main motivation for doing good karma? Well, because it becomes a kind of like a slightly refined form of hedonism. Well, because I'm going to be rewarded with it. And so let me do more, right? But that's what he calls a commercial bargain of self-interest, right? But there seems to be no overarching higher purpose behind it. So if we adopt a more evolutionary understanding of karma, then we do good things. Why? So that we can eventually attain limitless fulfillment, become perfectly unselfish, realize God, realize the higher self, realize our innately divine nature, so that much nobler kind of understanding of what our aims in life are. And this last point that he just read, which is that, see, some critics of modern Hindu thinkers, I'm thinking of people like Paul Hacker. He was a German Catholic German scholar. And even one of his students named Wilhelm Halbfass, another German guy, who was a professor at the University of Pennsylvania. They argue that these modern Hindu thinkers are inauthentic, that their views are radical deviations from classical Hindu traditions, and so they use the word neo-Vedantins or neo-Advaitins, neo-Hindu, and neo here has a very pejorative connotation, it's an insult. And what I'm saying here is we don't need to think about it in that way. And see, the reason why they say that is, look, because it was British ruled India at the time, and all these Western ideas, their heads got jumbled up with Western and Indian ideas, and they start disguising Western ideas in the garb of Hindu language. But actually what they're doing is defending certain non-Hindu views in the garb of Hinduism. And I think that that's a mistake, at least with respect to this kind of doctrine, for instance, this evolutionary doctrine of karma. Where do we find it? In the Bhagavad Gita, I mentioned it in chapter 1 of this book, Aneka janma samsiddhas toyati parangitim. Having attained perfection in the course of many births, slowly, through this evolutionary process, we eventually attain the highest goal. So Gita says that very clearly. So you can see the seeds of an evolutionary doctrine of karma even in the ancient Vedantic scriptures, so that you don't need to see the modern Hindu thinkers as saying stuff that's totally crazy and radically new or Western. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, also, like in Bhagavad Gita, karma literally means work or duty, right? So it doesn't have to, and it literally says that you are not the fruit of your.
Karmanye vadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana, which means you have the right to the karma, to the action,
Yeah.
but not to the fruits of the actions.
Yeah. So it's kind of like entangled how there are two different definitions. Like one is karma. When we talk about karma, it's about the work we are supposed, the duties, right? And then there is also the karma, like.
Right. It's a good point. And the thing is, it's because of the nature of the language. The word karma can be used to mean just the act itself, but it can also mean the papa or punya, the merit or demerit, which is the metaphysical result of the act.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to be careful about what do you mean by karma in the particular context. It's the same word is used to mean both things. It can mean the act itself or the karmic effect of the act.
So they're
Both are called karma.
different definitions, right? Like they're not the same thing. We're not talking about.
No. And you have to be very careful every time you talk about karma. Do you mean the act or do you mean the karmic effect of the act? Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
But the same word is used as a general term. But that's why it's better to be specific. So if you want to talk about the karmic effects of an action, say karmic effects, and say papa, punya, right? Those are the terms used. You can say, even in English, the thing is, oh boy, you're going to get a lot of bad karma, man. So that's talking about karmic effects.
Yeah.
Right? But then if you do something bad, you say, oh, that was a bad karma. You don't. That's not as common, actually, to refer to karma in English as the act itself. They're typically in English, when they use the word karma, they're thinking of the karmic effect as good or bad, right? But in Indian languages, it equally applies to both.
Yeah.
So that's a great point. Yeah, very good. Okay, so it's already 7:42. So what do we want to wrap it up, or what's our, in terms of time, what's our?
We will have Aarti
At 8, so we can go a little bit more. Okay, fine. Okay, so now a couple more things I suggest that we look at. So for instance, what about, this is a question I get all the time. When I was writing my book, I got this question multiple times. So page 23, section 234. Is there group karma? And why don't we have Aman read it? Is there
I've been
group
reading
karma?
a lot, Swami.
Huh? Okay. You know part of the reason? Because we have an online audience, and I think that the American accent is going to be easier for them to follow. Okay, read.
From all classical, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All classical and most modern Hindu thinkers held that karma pertains strictly to the individual soul. However, some have argued that a strictly individualistic conception of karma makes it difficult, if not impossible, to explain mass tragedies. Proponents of individualistic karma could rebut this objection by arguing that each of the people adversely affected in a mass tragedy individually deserve the suffering due to that person's own past actions, a fact that explains why even in a mass tragedy, individual victims suffer to varying degrees.
Okay, so do you see the problem here, or the question that arises? Think of something terrible, like some mass casualty, like the Nazi Holocaust, like Genghis Khan, committed mass slaughter of thousands of people all at once. So, is it really plausible to think that all of those people individually merited, from the standpoint of karma, the terrible things that happened to them? That's the question. Or do we have to, or is there such a thing as group karma to explain those things? That's separate from individual karma. So what I say in the first paragraph is, people who believe in individualistic karma will say that, well, yeah, it's not impossible that each of the people are there because of their own individual karma from past lives, and that's why they were brought together in that way. But you'll notice, what about that? I mean, it's not the most pleasant thing to talk about these things, but a few months ago there was that terrible plane crash in India.
Yeah.
When everybody except one guy, and that one guy walked off the plane. He was British or what? Or there was some, wasn't he British?
British
Indian. Yeah.
British Indian. He just walked. Hundreds of people were killed on the same plane, and this guy walks off. How do you explain that other than karma? I mean, it's like, so okay. So now Yorgos, you want to read the next paragraph?
Yeah.
Maybe Yorgos has explanation. Why one guy?
Yeah, why one guy?
Wait, why should he have the explanation?
No, just
Because
he's mathematical.
He's a genius. Okay. Let's all turn to the Greek sage. Okay.
Stop though.
Okay.
So good.
I'm instead going to read the.
Okay. Yes. Look at him. He's blushing.
Nonetheless, some modern Hindu thinkers have found this line of reasoning implausible, contending that a better way to account for mass calamities is to posit the notion of group or collective karma. Ananda Kumaraswamy, for instance, argued that the karma doctrine holds as much for groups and communities as for individuals, since no man lives to himself alone, but we may regard the whole creation as sharing a common karma to which every individual contributes for good or ill. Likewise, Aurobindo posited the existence of a group soul, which serves as the metaphysical ground for a group karma.
Right.
Karma that belongs not to a particular individual, but to a larger group of individuals.
Okay, so see, I'm not taking a strong stand here, but I'm just pointing out that there are two different views even within Hinduism. There's some modern Hindu thinkers who posit group karma. There's such a thing as like it's that there's America has accrued bad karma for certain things it's done in Iraq and other places, for instance, in
Cut
blah blah.
it.
And the countries can accrue bad karma, good karma, and so on and so forth. Groups of individuals can accrue good karma and bad karma. But in order to make sense of that in a more rigorous way, you need to posit a group soul, because there has to be a locus for that karma. And so Aurobindo actually goes so far as to say there's a group soul, separate from individual souls. Now, how do you prove that? Well, he might ultimately appeal to spiritual experience and say that you can actually experience the existence of these group souls. And then you might ask, well, why should I believe him? And you get into all sorts of complexity. But anyway, I'm curious about your intuitions about this. I mean, let's take the Holocaust. Do you lean on the side of believing in group karma, or on the side of just believing that each of them individually, were in those situations because of their past karma? And now, keep in mind that believing in that doesn't mean that you think they deserve it and that they had what's coming. That's not the point. We talk about that later in the book. But all I mean is, individually, are they there because of their individual karma, or is there kind of something to do with the group?
I think it's the individual.
You think it's individual? Yeah. So the classical view is that it's really based on their individual karma.
Yeah, because there is the quantity, right, of people who suffered compared to people who are like bad people to good people. I would say like normal people that just are around us are not like really bad or evil to do things like murder or things, right? So quantitatively, like bad people are in lesser fraction than big good people in the earth at any time. If we can say that, or maybe animals or these things. They're like all these souls are not cruel, right? Like.
How does that relate to the question?
The group karma versus individual
Yeah,
karma.
so that means that that there couldn't be a possibility that there were like hundreds of thousands of people that was bad in their previous lives that came to this point and suffered in the Holocaust or other things.
Oh, okay. It's a pretty complex argument. So, okay, you're assuming that there are far more good souls than bad souls. Is that the idea?
Yeah.
I'm not even sure why that would be the case. First of all, good and bad. But look, like most of us are selfish. Like probably 99%. It's very. If you're not selfish, you're a saint almost. And I would say that there are very few saints in the world. So the rest of us, we're not great. I mean, so there are varying degrees, of course. So I think some people can question the premise, which is that there are far more good people than bad people.
But okay,
I'm
not
not
that many
sure.
people deserve to be murdered. Maybe it's
Yeah,
better.
Right.
together.
Okay, right. Oh, I see. Just where are those souls coming from? But the thing is, remember, there are other lokas.
Yeah,
So there are all
that's
these temporary
the-
hells. But there might be all these Hitlers coming out from, you know. So yeah, I mean, these things are hard to understand, grasp with our finite intellects. God knows. That's another issue. See, some Hindu traditions believe that this law of karma is kind of self-regulating in some way, that it just runs automatically on its own. It's like this. What do you call that machine? Like a perpetual machine,
Yeah.
where it just keeps running, but without, you don't even need. It doesn't even have a battery.
It's a
just keeps
theoretical idea.
It's a theoretical idea which doesn't exist, but that's right. And so then that's a critique. So Sankhya kind of believes that, right? Sankhya and yoga, because there's no God who is the karma paladata. We talked about it briefly last time. There's no God who dispenses to us the fruits of our karmas. If there's no God, well then how do you explain it? They say that the principle, the law itself, just kind of, it's like a natural law, gravity or whatever. But it's not very easy to justify that. Okay. And so you need God to distribute the karmic results. Why was I going on that track? I was trying to explain
Group.
group karma.
Maybe this group of people deserve to dissolve or.
Well, that's the look.
their-
The thing is, look, when they're killed, it's obviously terrible. But they've exhausted a lot of their bad karma
Yeah,
through that,
so-
and their souls don't die. Right.
Yeah.
So from the Hindu standpoint, the soul is imperishable, it's eternal. They're going to come back again. Now that they've exhausted the bad karma, they're going to be reborn into much more favorable circumstances.
Yeah, maybe they deserve that chance to
Yeah, to exhaust their good,
yeah,
their bad
exhaust
karma.
their
Yeah,
bad
exactly.
karma. So
yeah.
that's how we can say the group concept.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
group is formed when they have to exhaust their bad karma.
I think
Right,
it's
but
just
then
a
that's not group karma though. That is individualistic karma.
Yeah,
so that's
yeah.
Yeah, probably just a group of really unfortunate individuals.
All of us are. The fact that we're talking to each other means we're unfortunate. we're,
I mean the people in the Holocaust.
Uh-huh.
I think it's just the people who got coupled with all of them are unfortunate. They got coupled in the Holocaust.
Oh, you mean like some people just could have by accident or something? By
No,
what are you saying?
it's just different people, different souls from with different degrees of karma,
Yeah.
just concentrated in one area. It's not like
Yeah.
a group soul or something. It's
No,
just-
no, right. The point, yeah, you're defending the individualistic understanding of karma, and I think that's a classical view, which I also find more plausible. Now, never jump to the conclusion that if we're in a position to help these people, that we shouldn't help them because they, karmically they deserve it. That's really a very callous and a wrong way of thinking from the standpoint of karma. I talk about it, and we'll get to that later. But the simple reason why is that if we are in a position to help that person, it's because of that person's the victims. Good karma, that we're in a position to help them. And if we are in a position to help them and we don't help them, we accrue bad karma. So on both sides, you have to understand that the workings of karma are extremely complex. And if we are there witnessing somebody suffering, and we can help them when we choose not to, then we're also implicated in the bad karma. You see what I mean? Yeah. So that's also an important thing to keep in mind. Okay.
I
Yes.
want to propose another more concrete scenario the ones we
Yeah.
discussed, and you tell me if it kind of holds up. I have lots of good karma from my previous life.
Ooh.
Right?
Ooh.
No.
Ooh. Humble much?
Not to brag, but
Somebody has a lot.
He said it so confidently. Okay, continue.
And they're reborn, but they're reborn in an extremely small, impoverished village in India.
Mhm.
But because of those circumstances, they end up growing to become extremely humble and sincere, and are given the opportunity to provide for their family.
Right.
This could be makes sense that this is a result of good karma, because
Yeah.
if somebody just looked at it, they're like, oh, they're
Right.
poor, this
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah,
bad,
correct.
right? But
Mhm.
they were put in a good
Yes,
scenario kind of thing,
yes,
so this would
absolutely.
work, right? Okay.
No, and Aurobindo, he gives that example. He says, look, this whole idea that, see, the whole problem is he says that when we think of good karma leading to good karmic effects, that we have a very superficial and crude understanding of what a good karmic effect is, because we think in terms of our own selfish ideas. And so good means what? I'll be reborn in the family of Kim Kardashian, right? As opposed to being born into a poor but extremely spiritual family, which would actually be, in a much deeper sense, good karma, right? That's absolutely right. So Sri Aurobindo says if you adopt this evolutionary view of karma, you can avoid these kind of overly superficial ways of thinking about what good and bad karma is. Good is anything that takes you closer to the ultimate goal of liberation, right? Or God realization or self-realization. Bad, things that make you more selfish, right? So at the same time, you can get both. Remember that 2 for the price of 1 thing. And so it's also true that if you do a lot of good karma in an unselfish way, first of all, look, even like, all these mental health problems are now multiplying, right? Depression, anxiety. And a lot of people are like that from their childhood. And again, that's a genetic predisposition, but which again can be explained via past life karma. You see what I mean? So
and Instagram.
What?
And Instagram.
Blame it.
Instagram?
Yeah, but karma and Instagram.
Oh, makes you depressed.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are a lot of things that can. I mean, not just Instagram. That's innocent compared to other stuff. Yeah. So there are a lot of bad stuff on the internet now, which is.
I'm kidding. I love you, Meta.
No. He's jeopardizing his own. Okay. So. Yeah, no. So if we're born, so for instance, another example of a good karmic result would be being born with a cheerful disposition, free from any kind of, no tendencies to depression or anxiety or schizophrenia or that itself is a good karmic effect, right? Okay. Any other thoughts? Great. Yes.
Yeah, I want to offer some explanation for why there could be like group karma without actually having group karma.
Okay.
And it's not that people have been put in a bad position within like a disadvantaged group because they have accrued a lot of bad karma in previous lives. But for example, say in the case of a nation, maybe inaction or basically inaction into injustices that your nation might be carrying out might make you morally culpable for them.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, believing that you can just live a carefree life within a nation where your taxes are being spent to fight wars, imperialistic wars and stuff. So you may be accruing like passively, so to speak,
that's a very
as a
interesting.
group.
It gets tricky. It gets really tricky. I mean, where do you draw the line? You brought up earlier about every step we take, we're killing people. So how do we know when we're accruing good karma and bad karma? So the main thing is in most Hindu traditions, what they say is focus on the stuff that you have control over, and that's like very overtly either good or bad. Start there, and then you can kind of move forward from there. Because otherwise you're going to be paralyzed, right? I mean, yeah.
Do you know the lightning in the bus story? My grandma used to tell, like, there was a bus that was traveling and it was like filled with people, like maybe 20 passengers and the driver and the conductor, like the person tickets in the bus. And at some point the lightning strikes the bus. So people are, like the driver tries to move and it strikes again and tries to stop them. And the driver says, okay, I guess there is somebody in this bus that has to die, and because of that the lightning is striking. So what we'll do is one by one we'll go stand below that tree, and maybe the lightning will strike the tree and
that one person will
yeah,
die.
That one person. We
It's
don't
a pretty
have
dark
to,
story. Okay.
Yeah, we all don't have to suffer because of that one person. We have places to go. Let's do that. And so the driver goes, the conductor goes, touches the tree, nothing happens. He comes back. The passengers go one by one, touch the tree, come back, nothing happens. And then there is this last person in the bus, and the second person goes and touches the tree, nothing happens. So he comes back, and then they all look at the last person and say, it's because of your karma that we were supposed to suffer. You were gonna kill all of us. Lightning was gonna strike the bus, and all this happened.
How dare you?
Yeah, how dare you? They all start like telling a lot of things.
Harassing him, hazing him.
Yeah. And then this guy has accepted that it's time for him to die. So he apologizes to everyone, and he goes out. He goes to the tree and touches the tree, and he's like standing for the lightning to strike him. But the lightning strikes the bus and
Only only the bus and not the people.
No, all of them. They all died.
Oh.
So it was this one guy. The reason he was in the bus, the lightning couldn't kill
Oh,
him.
because he was actually had the good
Yeah,
karma.
it was like it was a group karma of
that
these
was dark,
people
man.
in the bus.
I
Yeah.
think
Oh, wow.
another point is we cannot judge about good bad about other people.
Yeah.
We have to see our own. When I apply karma philosophy, I should see good
No,
and bad
yeah.
within me.
Yeah, that's right. Turn the mirror on yourself.
Yeah.
But this question is still haunting. I mean, passive karma is tricky. I mean, how do you know that because you're paying taxes now? Some of those tax dollars are going into sponsoring wars and unjust wars, arguably,
Yeah.
and all sorts of other stuff.
I mean,
Um,
group karma is there. So, Veshti Srushti, Samashti Srushti. So, Samashti is like a group, right?
Correct.
If you hold on that, because there is no escape.
Mm.
Because we cannot live alone. There will be
No,
lot
that
of-
gets tricky. No
Yeah.
man is an island. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, these are very interesting. So we'll keep. This is good. We're really going into the weeds here, which is I think that's a good thing. We're nerding out, and we'll continue next week. Just a little teaser. Is karma compatible with free will? Stay tuned.
There was an American philosopher back in the day who, because he didn't want to pay his taxes, so he just went and lived by himself in the woods. And I think he was apprehended like after some years, and then he wrote a manifesto which is called like the pencil.
Is this the
something.
Unabomber?
No. It's like back in the day, not 2 decades ago,
Okay.
maybe a century or two.
Okay, interesting. Okay, thank you everyone. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat.